This debriefing will have a lot of overlaps with what has already been seen and talked and discussed for participants who were there throughout. So I will start with this background on the seminar, actually. So this was a national mission of Himalayan studies, the key which was discussed. I mean, which was the seminar was a part of this study, which is this was a culmination of the project and sharing of their findings. And the objective was to better understand other researchers and advances, receive feedbacks and insights from similar work and landscapes in India and abroad to finalize the draft policy recommendations of the project. So there were 4 technical sessions. I will not go into the details, and there was an inaugural session. And in the inaugural session, the most important thing that was highlighted was the mountains were highlighted, actually. And it was a good way to start the technical session with this background of the mountains. And some of the key discussions that came was, or the recommendation that came was, was for long-term monitoring, transboundary cooperation, institutional capacity and human capacity enhanced, adding value to traditional crops and mountain niche crops for appropriate entrepreneurship, conservation of soil emerging as an important need in the mountains, and resilient mountain villages models were some of the things, the recommendations that came up. And in the technical session 1, which was biodiversity beyond protected areas, new perspectives for conservation, which was chaired by Dr. Sharma. It was quite evident that the areas outside protected areas, especially the socio-ecological production landscapes, hold significant biodiversity and provide valuable ecosystem services. I mean, this came across all the sessions and presentations. Then conservation through traditional knowledge and customary institutions was something that came from Dr. Ram Chowdhury's deliberation. And the importance of little known, crops of wild relatives, CWR, and their conservation in the off-reserve system was discussed, and how it was important that these kind of crops receive attention. And in the same session, research studies designed to better understand the mosaics in a landscape for better understanding of habitat use and conservation outcomes was demonstrated by Dr. Shankaraman. I mean, this was something, our researchers, our young researchers could take upon. Like it showed that how researchers could be, designed to better understand these kind of mosaic landscapes for better conservation outcomes. Forests don't equate to biodiversity was something Dr. Leelanath Sharma said, talking about the community forest of Nepal. And so there were a couple of opportunities that the socio-ecological landscape provide for conservation of biodiversity and agrobiodiversity using many different approaches. This was something that came from the session. So some of them were Nepal's low intensity farming, community forestry, inclusion and acknowledgement of customary and traditional practices, enhancing the role of grassroots and traditional institutions in the conservation and management of the landscape, strengthening community participation, customized management plans appointed by Dr. Leelanath and as well as by Dr. Ganeshan. Then multi-stakeholder conservation opportunities, which has come across other sessions also, and capacity building was also very, very important. And this also has come across all the sessions. So session number 2 was on the project itself, and it was chaired by Dr. Shanti S. Sharma. So this study, this project actually recorded as many as 566 species of different taxa from the landscape, from the Darjeeling Sikkim Himalaya landscape. And it was also found that the regulating services as water and water purification was one of the most important ecosystem services identified by the locals in the landscape. Capacity building was a focus of the project, and did a lot of capacity building of students, local community members, farmers, BMC members. And there were 5 PhD students and many publications that came out of this project. And this this project also has drafted a policy recommendations. Okay, so to continue with this session, there's open access database for mountain biodiversity of landscape made by the name of Mountain Biodiversity Information System, was actually an important outcome of this project. And policy frameworks for the extremely diverse and heterogeneous sociological landscapes of Darjeeling Sikkim Himalaya was discussed by Dr. Sadala Khaling as a part of this project. So high conservation value areas, Satoyama concept and model, other effective area-based conservation areas, and globally important agriculture heritage systems were discussed. Policy challenges as silos and piecemeal approaches, biodiversity not a priority in the sectoral plans, production still a central tenet of sectors and policies in were some of the challenges in the landscape. The session 3 was a nature-based solutions, role of biodiversity and ecosystems in the mountains, chaired by Dr. Madhu Verma. This session highlighted the importance of restoration, which would deliver mitigation, adaptation, and climate change outcomes. This was what Dr. Madhav Karki highlighted. Nature-based solutions could be hybrid, and governance is very important. Biodiversity has strong linkages with human well-being, and access to natural assets rather than government schemes was important, as what's delivered by Dr. Badola. Payment for coexistence was an interesting, I found it interesting, so I've added this. So this was something that Dr. Badola mentioned. The concept of 4 Rs for climate change mitigation was discussed by Dr. Dhani. Agroforest policies have a great opportunity for the socio-ecological landscapes and conservation therein. The third, the Satoyama concept. Sorry, I think there's a small mistake here. This is the last session on policy. So the Satoyama concept and framework was discussed to explain how it can be used for managing and governing the socio-ecological landscape by Dr. Yoje. And importance of science and policy interface was discussed with some references to to Dasgupta Review 2021, IPBS assessment, and Hindu Kush Himalaya assessment, and multi-stakeholder engagement was suggested along with effective science communication. I think science communication part suggested by Dr. Pandit was very important. Dr. Madhu Verma's talk was very elaborate, and I was very elaborate, and I captured the entire presentation of hers with her own tagline, making nature's value visible. That was her own tagline, and that was something she mentioned, which is very important to touch the chord for political will and policy formulation. So and Dr. Peek talked about valuing, protecting, and understanding soil as a vital part of the natural capital. The importance for soil governance was discussed during this session. So there were many very engaging discussions in all the sessions, and there's this huge gamut of information that came up, and lots of experiences which were shared from the talks from across the mountains and abroad. And these information could be effectively used and incorporated in draft policy recommendations of the project in the Darjeeling Sikkim Himalaya. And with that, I end my debriefing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sunita. And with this, we have with us Professor Shanti Swaroop Sharma, the Senior Professor, Department of Botany, Sikkim University, who is the guest of honor for this session. I apologize, I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the session, but I would now like to request him to please deliver the address of the guest of honor. So I give it to you, Professor Shanti Swaroop Sharma.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lakhaling. Am I audible? I hope.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Dr. Khaling from ATREE, Dr. Bhojacharya, Head Department of Zoology, Sikkim University. My colleagues from Sikkim University, I can see Professor Laxuman Sharma in this gathering. Dr. Ghanshyam Sharma, who is working in the field of Himalayan ecology. Distinguished participants from India and abroad, young participants. So we have come to the final stage of this two-day online seminar, Insights on Maintaining, Sustaining Biodiversity Elements and Development of Policy Framework for Socio-Ecological Landscapes in the Himalaya. Since yesterday, there have been excellent lectures on diverse aspects of the issue in the field. So by the experts and very learned scholars in these areas. So they have been summed up, all the sessions, so they were summed up by the learned chairpersons of them. And of course, as Dr. Sunita Pradhan, so she once again summed up everything. And it is inevitable to avoid repetition sometimes. Okay, so as such, the biodiversity elements, they are central to all ecosystem functions. And in this context, Sikkim, Darjeeling, Himalaya holds a significant place. So it's a part of biodiversity hotspot, and therefore it's home to many, many plant and animal species, microbial species. This harbors many endemic species. So rich biodiversity, among other functions, inter alia, it constitutes a very strong gene pool for many desirable traits for crop improvement. That is so important for ensuring food security in the current scenario. So yesterday there was a very important lecture about the wild relatives of crop plants and how the crops they can be enriched by using the gene pools from the wild relatives. Now, what we are concerned these days that owing to various anthropogenic reasons, there is a threat to different biodiversity elements. And in particular, these days we are talking a lot about climate change. And climate change, of course, this is damaging, not uniformly. In some parts, this is more damaging than in other parts. In northern hemisphere, for example, it is felt that photosynthetic activities, they will be enhanced to some extent, but eventually, so it is disastrous. Fortunately, so it is very, very important to consider that why biodiversity is important in mitigation of challenges like climate change. So fortunately, different plant species, they are endowed with tremendous ability and resilience, basically because they have flexibility in their genetic makeup. So to survive the adverse circumstances, so they can achieve tolerances through changes in their metabolic milieu, so which is basically because of the genetic flexibility. And these tolerances to many adverse circumstances, so they are co-tolerances. So if a genotype, plant genotype or animal genotype, if it is tolerant to one kind of adversity, so it is usually noticed that that will also be tolerant to another kind of adversity. Okay, because there are some common elements of tolerance, for example, antioxidative properties and many other physiological metabolic changes. So why I'm saying this is that plants particularly, or in animal systems also, so they can evolve tolerances to all different kinds of adversities. Because evolution is nothing but it's a function of selection pressure. If selection pressure is low, so tolerances, there will be changes will be slow. But if the selection pressure is acute, then so organisms, they do not have the choice. Either they will perish or they will have to survive. And to survive, so they will have to evolve tolerances. I'll give you just one example because this is very important. We are considering the importance of biodiversity in mitigation of all kinds of adversities. So before we come to the point of conservation, so it is very, very important. So a classical example is heavy metal tolerance in the plants. In Europe, so when industrialization began, so this mining activity started, and many heavy metal toxicities, they were reported in the soils. So some plants which were growing on these soils, so they evolved tolerance within 40 to 50 years. And this is a classical example of microevolution. Microevolution means that within a very small time frame, so plants or organisms, they can adapt to the adverse circumstances. And if climate change, so this becomes acute on some element, so this kind of changes, they can be expected. So in a nutshell, so there is a silver lining that, I mean, we are always scared about the harmful effects of climate change, but because of the resilience, so some solutions, they will be worked out. Okay, so organisms, they will take care of themselves and they will evolve tolerances against CC, climate change associated adversities, etc. So this means that biodiversity is very, very important for the survival, for ensuring food security and all. And in this prevailing scenario, so it is necessary that biodiversity is preserved, employing all possible strategies available to us. The protected areas are considered to be the most effective tools in this context. So there is, however, a huge potential beyond protected areas. And here comes the importance of the present project, so that has been carried out by ATREE and Sikkim University. The socio-ecological landscapes, they're crucial in conserving the natural and cultural heritage. The agro-ecosystems are a major component of the socio-ecological landscapes. In addition to the crop production, so they have a tremendous potential in conserving diverse biodiversity components and also provide a variety of ecosystem services. So despite the significance of agroecosystems, so there is a dearth of efforts in conserving and managing the traditional agroecosystems, particularly in the Sikkim Darjeeling Himalaya. It's a source of livelihood for more than 75% of the population in the region. Ironically, the agroecosystems in this region, they are experiencing diverse threats, such as the conversion of productive agricultural land for non-agricultural purposes, especially setting up of hydropower projects and pharmaceutical industries. The density of hydropower projects in Sikkim is incidentally, so this is highest in Asia. As a consequence to these disturbances, a loss of many important valuable taxa is estimated in near future. Already, a gradual loss of traditional crop varieties, underutilized crops, medicinal plants, and traditional knowledge, so that is diminishing, and this is being noted. In order to address these issues and understand the status of biodiversity of different agricultural ecosystems of Sikkim, Darjeeling, Himalaya, an extensive research has been carried out by a dedicated team of scientists from Sikkim University and ATREE. This project, as everybody knows, has been funded by Ministry of Environment and Forests, Government of India, under the National Mission on Himalayan Studies. The elaborate findings of the project, they were presented by yesterday, so I won't elaborate upon them. So they were very, very nicely presented in a very mature manner, with a very clear-cut understanding, and they have been summed up repeatedly, first by the chairpersons of the session and during the debriefing by Dr. Sunita Pradhan. So I don't have to repeat them. So but they significantly highlight the immense importance of agroecosystems in biodiversity conservation. So that is based on assessment of various taxonomic groups. So it was very nice. I was in this session, so where the presentations from the project findings were made. So based on the project findings, specific recommendations they have been formulated for a long-term conservation of agroecosystem and associated biodiversity in the region. So once again, I don't have to elaborate on them because we are running out of the time, and they have been summed up and they have been repeatedly highlighted by different speakers. In brief, the indigenous farming system dominated agricultural landscapes can effectively complement the protected areas in achieving the biodiversity conservation and ecosystem service provision goals. The research group, so that recommends that adopting land sharing conservation approach in low and mid hills of Sikkim, Darjeeling, Himalaya to complement the land sparing framework would be the most appropriate model. So this will ensure food security and human well-being without compromising the efforts for biodiversity conservation and maintenance of ecosystem services in natural and human modified ecosystems of Eastern Himalayas in general. Now there is a need of synergy between different government departments to bring out a policy that encourages farming and simultaneously restricts non-farming activities in agricultural systems. So some of the best practices for the purpose from other countries, so they need to be considered. So today, so I can see that Satoyama concept of Japan, so this has been talked about, and this is the talk of the event. So this is worth mentioning in this context. So as is evident from presentations made by Dr. Bhoj, Dr. Sarla Kharling, and other researchers yesterday, and many other learned speakers. So most of the defined project objectives, they have been sufficiently fulfilled. So for this, the entire team of investigators deserves to be complimented and congratulated. So they have been successful, and this is reflected in the publications in many forms. So this is completely clear to everybody. So I thank the organizers. I congratulate them for successfully organizing this seminar in an online mode. So definitely we would have liked to have it physically, but unprecedented pandemic scenario doesn't allow that. And so I congratulate the organizers and all the speakers. And I also thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to participate in the seminar. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sharma, and also throughout the time of the tenure of the project, I think from Sikkim University, you have been of great support to us, and also your department has been of great support to the project. Thank you so much for the words that you have said about the project and for the project team. So I would like to now request Professor Laxuman Sharma, who's at the Department of Horticulture, Sikkim University, and is also the co-PI of the project, to please tell the audience about the way forward.
Thank you, ma'am. I think I'm audible, right?
Yes.
Good. So respected Professor Shanti sir, our most respected senior professor of the university, distinguished invited speaker and panelist, organizer, I mean the core organizer, I can say, Dr. Sarala Khaling, Dr. Bhoj, Dr. Sunita, Dr. Basundhara, Rohit is there. And among us, Dr. Ghanashyam, you are chairing the session and is with us. And my dear students, most of the students are there, and the researchers from the project throughout, they are working hard for this seminar. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the host for considering me as a part of this concluding session and give some insight on way forward. Before I talk about the way forward, I like to congratulate the entire team of organizing committee for successful completion of the seminar. And I'd like to congratulate entire team then of the project and co-PI, all researcher staff, and for successful completion of with high level of the outcomes. Especially, I'm talking about the project, since this is also the concluding session for the project too. Being a part of the project as a co-PI, I must put on record that the Sikkim University and ATREE had shown the exemplary coordination in implementation of the project. I must appreciate the functioning of ATREE as a non-government organization, their planning, their execution of the work. I think Dr. Bose will agree with me that we, the member of Sikkim University, really learned lots from your functioning, where you have maintained high level of professionalism, especially in the research and implementation of the project. We wish that Sikkim University and ATREE will have more collaborative project and more interaction in days to come to solve many unsolved ecological or livelihood problems of the region. Next to it, I also like to highlight in brief about the project. Of course, this can be a little bit duplicacy to the earlier speakers also. But across the deliberation, we have seen the excellent research and the policy for documentation, conservation, and utilization of biodiversity, especially by the other researcher in the protected area. But the presentation made by our researcher from our project, that speaks volume of works and outcomes. It is really good contribution to those who really want to undertake the research in this kind of a landscape. And I can say that our outcome might have surpassed many good researches which were taken place in other part of the world also. Then, despite knowing the erosion of the biodiversity, we scientific communities were quite reluctant to really study the amount of loss in diversity or to understand the change in farming system and the cropping patterns. So this project has crossed such barrier, that means thinking barrier, hypocritic thinking, you can say, among us. And this has enlightened the world that the socio-ecological landscape really harbors more biodiversity and need immediate attention for the conservation and the utilization. And we all understand that we understand the biodiversity element and the ecosystem services, which is written in the Sikkim, Darjeeling, Himalayan area. Detailed studies on butterfly, odonates, amphibians, reptiles, bird, mammals, small or the large mammals, bats are well undertaken in the different farming system, different ecological situations. And the capacity of the students, researchers, and the locals and the traditional community was seen as a major output of this project. And one of the major output and the exemplary work we can see is open access mountain diversity database and the information system. And based on all this data, and we have also seen that the policy, very, very good policy, has been framed by our eminent people who knows the Sikkim and the Darjeeling socio-ecological landscape. Then if we have to talk specifically for the way forward, I think it is a high time that the policymaker and the scientists come together to vet openly the policies and to understand the nitty-gritty of smooth implementation of such policies. Across the country, we have seen that there is very, very less opportunity for linking research and the policy, and ultimately successful implementation of the policy could not happen because of very weak linkage between the research and the policy. There are, plethora of number of documented policies and the recommendation for sustainable conservation and utilization of biodiversity. However, there still exists very, very huge gaps are there. Beside the outcome of the project, we have also listened a number of the good practices followed in different parts of the country and the globe that are replicable to different parts of the world having similar landscape. The compendium, probably the compendium of this seminar will really be or good documents if we incorporate all along with our policy documents, and many more points can be added added to our policy also if they are replicable at our landscape. And to talk about the way forward, we as a researcher, we have lots of documented policy, drafted policy, written by ourselves or some policy makers. But somehow this discussion of these policies, documented policies, do not get a discussion platform. So I, as a team of this project, actually personally feel that such platforms should be created so that the policy guidelines can be discussed with legislature or any of the policy makers, so that at least some of our recommendation can be a part of the government schemes of the policy and really implemented at the grassroots level for conservation of the biodiversity or their utilization. So keeping this project in baseline, we need to understand more on the factor that pose to biodiversity, like intensive agriculture, like fisheries or livestock production. Good practices in agriculture should be well defined for each agroecological situation. We have long been accepting that organic farming is one of such good practices and sustainable also for biodiversity conservation and the utilization, but we still lack the assessment. So detailed impact assessment of the organic farming, especially on the ecosystem services or biodiversity conservation or climate change or carbon sequestration or any other impact, can be a step ahead to understand the dynamics of nature and human exploitation. Since Sikkim is practicing organic farming since long time, so I think we should take the lead at this landscape for the impact assessment of organic farming, to really come out with some facts that how the organic farming is really helping in biodiversity conservation and utilization, as well as for climate change resilience or climate resilience. So many speakers I have seen that they highlighted on loss of local germplasm also. One of the major reason of non-adoption of the crop, somewhere were talking like the crops like buckwheat and the millet. Even in Sikkim, we have many local germplasm. So location is specific. In fact, we don't. They are rejected by the farmers, or they are not taken up by the government as a scheme because they have a low yield and they are not registered and they don't have the static genetic characteristics. So for that, I think one way is local location-specific breeding program for improvement of such crop. Rather to introduce the crop from the outside, I think we have to improve our crops. We have to increase their yield so that our crops will remain there, our biodiversity, agro-biodiversity will be there side by side. Along with that, we can also increase the yield. With or any other desirable trait we can improve within our local germplasm. So genetic improvement of our local crops and their conservation is equally important to sustain the food production and meet the livelihood demand of the populations. So then we know that earlier the breeding used to be taken up by only the scientists or the universities or some breeder. But now it is, the case is different. We have different act in place like Biodiversity Act, Plant Varieties and Farmers' Right Act, and many more acts are there where farmers can also register their varieties. They can improve their varieties. They can take the equity, from or equity benefit they can share. So that can be taken up as a in a participatory mode with the scientist, or traditional breeding also they can do that. So we may have to go a long way to understand the dynamics in the interaction of the human with biodiversity. Also like wildlife, different classes of insects and animals, plants, and overall in ecosystem. Actually, these whole 2 days we have seen very learned people. They have given very good policies, and everything is there. I think It is something like the drop in the ocean, if I have to tell here, because we are not very expert in that also. But still, I just like to highlight some points without taking much time as a takeaway point. What I feel, of course, there may be many in the list, but what I feel, I just want to say some of them. So we have seen that as far as the research of the biodiversity and the socio-ecological landscape, we hardly have proper document of different components of ecosystem across the Himalayas. Maybe these studies these type of studies can be taken up by other hamlets of the Himalayas, other areas. We may have to work more on understanding diversity at the species level, especially the agrobiodiversity, and more specifically the economic crops or of local landscape. Then understanding the population dynamics at the local landscape of important species in the realms of climate change, maybe other sector to work on it. Then improving our value addition to ecosystem services to make the resources more economical while conserving and sustaining the ecology. And then probably being from the agriculture background, I just want to highlight about the improvement of the local germplasm, which I already said. There may be many strategies for improving those crops. Importantly, I already said we have to initiate the participatory breeding program to breed the farmers' variety. We can establish seed bank. We can add value to the local crops. We can conserve and make the uniform availability of the pollinators for increasing the yield of the such crops. And in the organic farming, nutrient and the pest management is another area which has really which is also a challenges. We have done very less work on it, where lots of work can be done for exploring, especially the microbial community, for effective decomposition of probably the biomass for making compost and all, or utilization of the microbes for nutrient fixation or mobilization, or use of many entomopathogenic microbes to use them as biopesticide, or are the other sectors where we can really work on at least in this landscape, and at least in context of organic farming. We have hardly done any work on microbial diversity in the Himalayan ecosystem. Himalayan area where the soils are more natural without use of synthetic fertilizer and the pesticide, there is more chances that we may get more beneficial microbes than any other area. Actually, our area, this particular, in fact, Sikkim, where we are practicing organic farming since long time, can be a model research center for this kind of the finding of the microbes, beneficial microbes, where we have not, only 0.1% of the microbes are being explored. So that can be very good study, I think, in days to come. Then there in these microbes and the plants interaction is new emerging area of study, especially in context to Himalayas and organic farming. Then I already talked about the plant breeding program. We really have to initiate at least for 1 or 2 crops so that that can be exemplary. We have seen many examples even from the Nepal also improving the rice variety and their yield by around 10 quintals per hectare, by participatory breeding process or by traditional breeding. Then pollinators is another important important aspect where we can work on to increase the productivity of the crop and for ultimately the sustainability of the food production. And of course, the skill development of our youths and the green skill, though there are much efforts we are putting up by the different organizations, but still we have to intensify it. Then community awareness is continuing process of all stakeholders, including ATREE, universities, or many state governments they are putting on pressure, but especially the awareness and conservation and utilization of biodiversity is really lacking, and we need to intensify. Of course, much efforts are there from the Biodiversity Board and even from ATREE and through some projects and all. Here, other point is I have seen here the many history scholars are there, our students are there. I wish they can plan the research. Now, there is a new education policies also. So they should plan their degree as a multidisciplinary type. For example, in this context, when we talk about biodiversity, let there be some perspectives of like economics, statistics, social dynamics, basic and applied science, so that some concrete or the holistic recommendation we can get on. Other one is these are the some points to take forward. Of course, there is no limit of studies, and there are very high-end studies nowadays. We can replicate it from the other countries too. And other way forward, I just want to look from the partnership or the inter-institutional collaboration. So I, on behalf of Sikkim University, would like to extend a strong partnership, more partnership with ATREE or other such organizations like TMI is there with us, always with us. We have a partnership, but a strong partnership, more holistically with the holistic projects. We have, I think, we have to work in future to formulate the projects or to work together to solve some critical issues of the mountain ecosystem, because we are the people that we really know the mountains, So from the grassroots, we are knowing it, we know the problems also, but somehow through research, we are not solving it. I think if we all come together, we can really solve that point. And lastly, I just want to say that during the seminar, we came across lots of recommendations and the policy drafted for other region of the countries also, or the world, and many models were also shown, or it was there in the lecture of many prominent speakers. So if the drafted policy from our project can be revisited, if we find something replicable in our landscape, and take the policy to the next level, such as interaction with policymaker, bureaucrats, or legislature, and any other stakeholder, so that consensus would be drawn for inaction as a government policy. So we can equally contribute to the local government also to draw the strategy for the real implementation. If something happens like this, the project, the outcome of the project and the outcome of this, the international seminar will be very, very fruitful, and somewhere we can say that the outcome may be probably one or two policies also, if we do some inaction or we do some kind of exercise, at least to convince the policymaker or bureaucrats or the legislatures in the near future as a team, we all as a team here. So I think that will be more fruitful. And I think with this, I just want to conclude here, and thanks a lot to especially to Dr. Sarala Khaling and Dr. Bose for inviting me to this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. So with this, we come to the end of the seminar. But before that, I would like to request Dr. Basundhara Chettri, who is the assistant professor at the Department of Zoology and also a co-PI of the project. Her specialization is on herpetofauna. So Dr. Basundhara, please could you come and announce the vote of thanks, please?
Thank you. Warm greetings to all of you. Finally, we have come to the end of this 2 days seminar. It must have been very hectic, but I'm sure it would have been equally rewarding to listen to the diverse talks by the eminent scientists. Though this seminar was a planned activity of the project, but due to the uncertainties of the COVID, whether to have offline, online, or the duration, it was settled in a very short duration. So the whole project team are very indebted to all the speakers who were kind enough to accept our invitation in a very short notice. So I'm privileged to propose the vote of thanks. To begin with, the project team would like to express our deep gratitude to Dr. Eklavya Sharma, a former DDG, Isimot Kathmandu, for accepting our invitation to deliver the keynote address in a very short notice. And we would also like to thank him for chairing the first technical session. Next, our sincere thanks goes to Engineer Kirit Kumar sir, Director, GB Pant Institute, Almora, Uttarakhand, and also the nodal officer for this national mission on Himalayan studies. Sir, you are very prompt and accessible to all our queries and questions, which led to the smooth functioning of this project in both the institute, ATREE, as well as Sikkim University. And also the successful completion, it has resulted into the successful completion despite of the pandemic situation. Sir, we look forward to work under your guidance in the future as well. We would like to express our immense gratitude to Professor Avinash Kare, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Sikkim University. He was very kind and encouraging to all our project related activities, and he has extended all the necessary facilities to carry over this project activities. Thank you, sir. Now, our sincere thanks to the plenary speaker of the technical session one. First, Professor Ram Prasad Chowdhury from the Tribhuvan University, Nepal. We would also like to thank all the speakers of the invited talks, Dr. R. Ganeshan from ATREE, Bangalore, Dr. T.R. Sankar Raman from NCF, Mysore, and Dr. Leelanath Sharma from Forest Action, Nepal, for sharing their research findings, their primary research findings, which was very interesting and clear to understand. Thank you all, and we hope we will be able to engage through some collaborative research in the future as well. The next technical session, we had the presentation by our own project staff. We would like to thank them for their hard work and enthusiasm throughout this project tenure, and we wish all our project staff good luck for their future. The next day two technical session began with a very interesting talk by the plenary speaker, Professor Madhav Karki from the Institute of Forestry, Tribhuvan University, Nepal. Sir, your talk was very insightful, and I think all the participants would have benefited from your vast insights into the nature-based framework for restoration and management in mosaic landscape of the Eastern Himalaya. Thank you, sir. The next speakers for this third technical session was Dr. Dr. Ruchi Badola from WII Dehradun, followed by Dr. Salini Dhyani, CSIR Nagpur, and Dr. Subrot Sharma from GB Pant Institute, Leh Ladakh. All of them shared their vast work experience from the Western Himalaya. I hope their expertise will, if we can take their expertise in the Eastern Himalaya and more specifically to the Sikkim Darjeeling Himalaya in the future, it will be very significant for driving the policy or the conservation strategies, to develop conservation strategies in this region. And I hope, again, we will have some engagement in the future with all the expertise. The last, I think this session was chaired by Dr. Madhu Verma. We would like to thank Madam for a very interactive and interesting session, bringing out the interesting session. And the last technical session was began with the talk of plenary speaker, Dr. Yoji Natori from the Akita International University, Japan, followed by Dr. Ram Pandit from the University of Western Australia. And the next talk was by Dr. Madhu Verma, Chief Economist, World Resource Institute, and finally by Dr. Louis Peake from the University of East Anglia, United Kingdom. All of them talk was so engaging, and I only wish that we can hear them again. and get more insights from their expertise. Now, I would like to thank all the internal members from the Sikkim University who were very much engaged in this project tenure. To begin with, I would like to thank on behalf of the entire project team, Professor N. Satyanarayana, Dean, School of Life Sciences, for his involvement since the inception of this project. Sir, your help was very, very important for the successful completion of this project. And yesterday you were highlighting this success of the project was because of the right people, and you were there since the recruitment, since the project staff were recruitment was taking place. You were there. So we seek your guidance and support in the future also. Our gratitude to Professor Shanti Swaroop Sharma, Senior Professor, Department of Botany, Sikkim University, and who is also the special guest in this valedictory function. Sir, you are very supportive and encouraging in all our activities. Thank you, sir. And all the statutory officers of the Sikkim University, registrar, finance officer, controller of examination, librarian, have been very supportive throughout the project tenure. And I think without their support, this project would not have been completed in time. This project, the complete success of this project also is due to the local institute and the organizations, the NGOs, panchayat members, the biodiversity management committees, and the local communities at various level who has helped us in a different level and different scale to carry out our project activities. Our sincere thanks to all of them. Last but not the least, the organizers are thankful to all the participants who have been constantly actively engaged for these two complete days, for 2 whole days. To name a few, I have seen Dr. Nivedita Mukherjee, Dr. Robert, Dr. Jenny Gurung, Dr. M. Nitin, Dr. Hismi Jamil Hussain, Dr. Dol Raj Thanit from Tribhuvan University. And if I have missed anyone, we would like to thank from the bottom of our heart. All the project team are indebted for your active participation and making this seminar very interactive and interesting. Thank you all. And finally, cheers to all the NMHS team for successful completion of this project, despite of this COVID pandemic. And I hope we will be able to work again in the future. Thank you, and good day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Basundhara. And once again, on behalf of the organizers, I would really like to thank everyone. I would like to thank all the technical session chairs, and especially the speakers who really actually accepted our request very, very quickly, even though we gave them very little short time to get back to us. Thank you so much. And thank you very much to the participants, and especially to the young researchers. You all are the future of research, policy, whatever we do in these landscapes. And I hope all these deliberations will give you new ideas to do research, to be good practitioners, and also to learn and give back to the landscape. Thank you so much, and wish you all a very good evening. And please be safe during this COVID situation. Thank you so much.